Hi there, and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and I'm absolutely delighted you're with us today because we are going to explore how you can design transformative experiences for your clients, for your customers, for your colleagues, and the communities you serve through narratives that place your audience actively at the center of your stories. When I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking of the opposite of transformative customer experiences. In fact, I'd call them traumatic experiences, like the barbecue joint in northern Arizona who just sent us off with our to-go order without any barbecue sauce. I mean, come on, you have one job to do, and you're reminded of that job every day as you pull up to your restaurant with the big barbecue sign in the parking lot. And while their food is solid, their poor service is only usurped by the syrup of filth on their scuffed-up black and white checkered painted plywood floor. Not the greatest user experience. Another traumatic, not dramatic, but traumatic user experience I recently weathered was trying to get through Adam Gopnik's new book called The Real Work on the Mystery of Mastery. I heard his interview on NPR and was so excited to read his findings. I thought I'd get some insights on what is mastery all about and how can we each uniquely attain it. Well, I've come to believe that his last name of Gopnik is an onomatopoeia of sorts for the lack of intelligible writing found in his book, The Real Work. It's full of Gopnik, like highfalutin show-off sentences I couldn't understand, commas as frequent as speed bumps in a school zone, inane metaphors for mastery he tried to make as he told the story of taking driving lessons in his middle age. And he dedicates a full chapter to his pareisis, or shy bladder syndrome. Now, what Gopnik can't producing a piss in public has to do with mastery is a mystery to me. I got through Gopnik's not-so-shy bladder syndrome by skimming the final chapter just so I could congratulate myself for making it through this misleading book on mastery. Again, not a transformative, but a fairly traumatic customer experience. And then there's A1 Garage Door Service, working in an industry that you would not expect terrific customer experience in. Yet A1 goes out of its way to train their technicians on how to make every customer engagement not only masterful, but memorable. You can hear Tommy Mello, founder of A1 Garage Door Service, on episode number 385 of the Business of Story show. He shares how he built his remarkable company, now operating in 20 states, by focusing on transformative customer and colleague experiences. So as you'll hear today, the first place transformative customer experiences start is with your crystal clear communication. Make it easy for your audiences to become the central part of your story, because if you don't, your interactions just may come off sounding like this.
Yes, now, on the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
Do you know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Well, then who's playing first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
Who?
The guy on first.
Who?
The first baseman.
Who is on first?
Have you got a first baseman on first?
Certainly.
Then who's playing first?
Absolutely.
You know how frustrating it is when your communications do not land right the first time. Now you can be crystal clear with all of your messaging using the and, but, therefore, Agile narrative framework. With the ABT, you cover all three bases of powerful storytelling, including agreement, contradiction, and consequence that our primal pattern-seeking, cause and effect, decision-making, limbic buying brain adores. So you can avoid the who, what, and I don't know of confusing communications.
Now I throw the ball to first base. Whoever it is drops the ball, so the guy runs to second. Who picks up the ball and throws it to what? What throws it to I don't know. I don't know throws it back to tomorrow. A triple play.
Yeah, it could be.
I don't care.
Oh, that's a shortstop.
Here it.
Learn how to apply the ABT now with our quick online course called The ABTs of Agile Communications, only found at businessofstory.com/ABT. Your messages will be clearer, more compelling, and safe at home every time. That's businessofstory.com/ABT. So how are you creating value in the experiences you deliver to your customers, to your colleagues in the communities you serve? Well, today's guest shares her expertise in building transformative experiences through the stories co-created with her and her audiences.
I need to add value if I'm going to compete. Frankly, everybody's playing in the experience economy. The more competition there is, the more distrust there is from customers. And so in order to rebuild that trust and create value for the services and the experiences that we provide, we have to effectively add value. And your customer's going to tell you if you're doing that, if they can tell you that their time spent with you was time well spent, saved, or invested.
Aransas Sava is a coach and experience designer at Stone Mantel and the co-host of the Experience Strategy podcast. Drawing on her over 2-decade career, Aransas combines behavioral science and coaching to partner with experienced strategists at leading consumer brands, including Weight Watchers, Best Buy, Truist Bank, and Clayton Homes, to create meaningful and often transformative customer journeys. Based in Brooklyn, Aransas is a 20-time marathoner. 20 times. I can't even imagine running that far that many times. She is wife to a newscaster and mother to a 200-year-old sourdough culture, a fluffy pup, and 2 spirited creative girls. She uses storytelling as a central theme in their work to unify the complementary, though often competitive disciplines of marketing strategy and experience strategy. Today, you'll learn how Aransas employed aspirational storytelling techniques while leveraging a strategic partnership with Oprah to differentiate a wellness brand. You'll learn why understanding the transformation economy is crucial if brand strategists want to tell stories that keep customers engaged and motivated over long periods of time, and why measuring time well spent, time well invested, and time well saved helps brands more effectively understand what customers perceive as valuable. So please welcome to the Business of Story, Aransas Sava of Stone Mantel. Aransas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
You're coming to us from Brooklyn? Do I have that right?
I am. Brooklyn, New York. Not far from the Nets Stadium, in fact. So.
Oh, okay. Have you been out in New York a long time, grown up there? What's your, give us a little bit of your background.
Oh, sure. I grew up in Texas. I am a 6th-generation Texan, so you'll definitely hear a little of that accent sneak in from time to time. And I've been in New York for 22 years now, so it definitely feels like home. I came here after, I like to say that I moved progressively colder as I moved northward. So grew up in Texas, went to grad school in Ohio, and then decided it wasn't cold enough, so I had to move to New York.
And being a 6th-generation Texan, you probably may not want to listen to my show from last week, which was with one of the co-authors of the book, Forget the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth. And everything we know about the Alamo is basically false. And it was a really fascinating, fun show.
I can't wait to listen. Yeah, I think the most common response to the Alamo is, I thought it would be bigger. So I think anyone who's been there has had a similar moment of disappointment.
Yeah. Well, how long have you been in the marketing world? Give us a little bit of your backstory and how you find yourself where you are today.
Yeah, it's funny that you say marketing. I really haven't spent any of my career in marketing. I have always worked with marketers. I came to business by a circuitous path, as many have. As all stories go, there were lots of good twists and turns. I I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. And as a college student, somebody said, "Hey, why don't you go to grad school?" And so I bought some time by getting a few degrees in theater, got a bachelor's in scenic design and directing, and then my master's in acting. And all I really knew was that I liked people and I liked stories, and I had no idea how that could translate to anything that would make a life. And so I studied the only thing I could think of. And then I finished grad school and I thought I had two choices. I could go to LA or I could go to New York. I didn't feel like I was an LA person. So by default, I came to New York. And I was working in theater, producing, directing, acting, and went to a Weight Watchers meeting one day, and a woman said to me, "Hey, have you ever thought about working here?" And I started talking to them about how to create a better sense of presence and authenticity amongst their staff, and ended up teaching their team how to do presentation skills and just some real fundamental self-presentation techniques, which translated into a long and beautiful career in innovation, experience strategy with a category leading brand where I couldn't possibly have learned more in any education program than I did in those years. I got to work across a lot of different disciplines and really learned how to work not just cross-functionally, but using your language of story, learned how to use story to create impact.
So really coming off of your training in theater, both set design and acting, you were always looking for that experience, and that sounds like it naturally played over into marketing. How do you define experience strategy?
So I work mostly with customer experience, but we also, of course, work with employee experience. And really it is about the person's experience of a brand. So we like to say that brand and marketing work hand in hand with experience strategy. So brand and marketing, your job is to make a promise. Our job is to deliver on that promise. When the promise is made or not fulfilled, that's where you end up having a bad experience with a brand or as a result of a marketing message. So really, it is a beautiful partnership when it works well.
Give us an example of a brand that is making a lot of promises with their storytelling, but not delivering on that experience.
Oh, I hate to do this to them, but
it's all right. I mean, we all have been there.
When the best fall, right? So I'm a big fan of Southwest Airlines. I will say that I have loved this company for decades for their experience. And they, against all odds in many ways, made a business out of an experience. And out of some smart strategic decisions. But they really were the leaders for so long in terms of experience. And they learned powerful ways to delight a customer that made them not only memorable, but meaningful, where they were able to build a deep and lasting relationship with their customer. And when you talk to a Southwest Airlines passenger, there is this fierce brand loyalty. And you saw that same experience played out in their employee experience. My mother worked for them for many years, so I got the inside track on that one for a long time. And there was a coherent experience across every touch point. Their business strategy, their employee strategy, and their customer strategy were all beautifully aligned across a mission and a vision. And so it executed seamlessly. I think over the last few years, we've started to see that fracture in some really sad ways. And this last sort of business cycle or media cycle that we saw with them, I think, unfortunately cost them a lot in terms of their brand perception and in terms of their experience perception.
Yeah, you talked about earlier this year when those storms hit and totally shut them down. and just their model was such that they couldn't get to passengers quickly enough, nor did they have crews that were rested enough to be able to fly. And I'm like you. I've always been a big fan of Southwest, although it seems like their prices have gotten extraordinarily more expensive than their competition lately, which is sort of flies, of course, in the face of what their brand experience is all about. And then to see that big of a debacle on that scale. You know, that old saying that trust grows like a pine tree and falls like a pine cone. You know, I've been a huge fan of theirs forever. And then, boy, when you see that happen, it really makes you think twice about, am I going to book with them again, or are they going to strand me somewhere?
Right. And that just wasn't a question we asked for so long. And every airline has outages. It was the scale of this one. And I mean, the thing that I think is sort of ironic about it, and one of the things we talk to our clients a lot about, we've spent the last 20 years evaluating experience strategy trends. And this year we launched our first ever proper trend report for experience strategists. And I felt like the moment was essential because we're seeing a greater pace of change right now in terms of customer expectations than maybe ever before. And one of the trends that we identified is expect the unexpected. Uncertainty is certain. And we are seeing that the companies that are doing the best in these highly unorthodox times are the ones that are nimble and agile and able to adapt to changing customer needs, but also changing cultural needs and technological innovation. And I think a year ago, I would have held Southwest up as the prime example of this. They made their entire business on the back of that fuel decision. So for those of you who haven't been following this as closely, decades ago now, they made the very smart decision to invest in their own fuel supplies. And so when everybody else was scrambling to keep up with pricing around the changes in fuel supply prices, they were able to continue to delight their customers through low prices through their own fuel reserves. They expected the unexpected. So the fact that now we're looking at them fall as a result of a lack of planning for the unexpected, I think is just another big bit of evidence about the responsibility we all have to plan for things not being business as usual anymore.
Who's doing a good job with this? They expect the unexpected.
All I can think of at this moment is the ones who are doing a really bad job. The bank failures, I think, are probably the thing we'd talk about the most urgently
Silicon
on
Valley
that.
Bank and whatnot. Yeah,
exactly, right? Like that was a pure story of not expecting the unexpected. You know, I think the hotel industry is doing some really interesting things here. So if you look at hotels historically, you've had designated spaces that were meant to function in a single way. Well, we all had this amazing forcing function for innovation in the pandemic that caused us to really quickly move to adapt to our customers' changing needs. And we all put our heads down and worked around the clock and made it happen. And a lot of hotels discovered that their spaces were actually far more multifunctional than they'd ever given them credit for. So they learned that they could turn ballrooms into large fitness event spaces or into co-working rooms or, frankly, whatever their customers needed. And so what we're seeing more and more is whether it's restaurants or hotels, really the hospitality industry has challenged itself to step up and be more adaptable and more modular. So now your hotel room is going to, in many cases, going to be more equipped with more functional, adaptable furnishings. So you might see it can be an office, or it can be a sleeping room, or it can even be set up in many cases with a couple extra chairs to be a temporary office space. What's
another trend in your report? And you call this the Experience Trend Report?
It's the Experience Strategy Trend Report. So the first one, and maybe the one nearest and dearest to my heart for maybe obvious reasons given my career history, is well-being is everywhere. And this is certainly something we've seen coming over the last 15 years. It's really accelerated over the last 5 years. But, I do research with a broad range of categories every day. So I'm talking to folks about their banking needs, and I'm talking to them about their healthcare needs and their expectations from the companies that provide their housing and on, right? So we're looking at these people's desires holistically. And I just want every company out there to know that if they think they are not in the well-being industry, they have to think again. Because customers expect a holistic level of support and understanding. They want their bank to know that they're not just investing money or opening a checking account. Rather, this is something that affects their entire system. And that, in fact, leads us to maybe another one of the trends, which is that for a long time, and you'll know this as a marketer, right? You've seen we spent a lot of time focusing on segmentation and demographic-led decisions in marketing. We did the same then when we all said, we've got to customize, we've got to individualize. And I think there is still a place for both of those, and they still have a role to play. But what smart companies are doing right now is they're looking at the small group. And it's not just the family, but the groups of friends that influence the decision making and the usage of our products. And so that's another one that we're really pointing to is
Can you give us an example of that in action that people would recognize?
The first one that comes to mind is family banking apps, right? So there are a number of apps in the market now that do this head on. But I think what you're seeing in smart banks is that they're enlisting input from other interested parties. We're seeing it a lot in the home buying space. So if you're buying a home, well, one person may sign the papers, but it's not just their decision. They're not the only one who's going to live in this house or use this house. Rather, and this is a trend we've been watching over the past 3 years, is families are involving their children in decision making more than they have historically. And so we are perceiving decision making not as an individual decision, but as a group decision that really influences the whole. We're also seeing, going back to the home buying sector, I think it's really interesting to watch how more and more sort of non-traditional groups of people are purchasing homes together. So rather than buying a home with just the sort of traditional family unit, you're seeing siblings purchase homes together or groups of friends purchase homes together. And so how people define their most intimate circle it has become increasingly diverse and personalized. But the point remains, my decisions don't just affect me. They affect you if you're close to me. And so I want your input, and I want them to work for us.
So how do you all get involved in that experience strategy design? Because I imagine your clients are maybe trying to do this themselves internally, or they've got an ad agency where I would also picture they would think you're maybe trampling on their turf a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's got to be kind of an interesting spot for you. How do you guys do it? And you get involved, and then what do you look for in a customer and how you help them?
Yeah, so we work with a wide range of companies, and they are all what we would call customer-led companies, or they aspire to become customer-led companies. And it doesn't mean that we don't work with companies that have really strong branding teams, but rather we believe that, as I said, it's about promises made and promises kept. And so often when you see a fracture in customer satisfaction, it's because one of those promises has hit a failure point. And so what we're best at is really understanding human beings and what they most want and need and how they measure success and satisfaction. So one of the areas that we've been really innovating in is helping customers helping companies understand what time well spent is for their customer. I talk to customers all day long, like I said. And when I ask them about time, they almost always say the same thing. They almost all say time is money. Because we understand that time is our rarest and most precious resource. And there is only so much of it, and how we spend it is a major driver of our perception of value and benefit from a relationship with a company. And so what we try to help companies do in many cases is understand what is time well spent. What is time? How do we save time for the customer? Yes, that's valuable. That can meet some functional needs and serve a customer in terms of saving time, maybe getting a little more time by getting their time saved with us. That said, ultimately, it's about time well spent with us too, if we want to really start to add value. And maybe the highest value then would be time well invested. So when we talk to customers about time well invested, what we're talking about is, I gave you my time and my data and my resources. In exchange, what are you giving me? Was it more than what I gave you? So by giving you my time, my money, my resources, did you return something that was even more valuable, usually in terms of insight or some other reward?
Yeah, you make it worth their while.
That's right.
Just finishing up reading a book called Stolen Focus that has really captured my attention by Johan Harari, and he talks about how the internet, Google, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, you name it, is stealing our time because they command our attention, and it's stealing our time away from our friends and families and probably much more productive pursuits. And then they also talk about everything from diet to pollution and how it's impacting attention spans and literally stealing our time because we are not present. We're not there. And so I can really see your point about a brand working with a customer of like, how can I make this time of you coming in, whether you're buying tennis shoes or a home or a financial product, make this time as rewarding as possible for you. So it's not only an investment of your money, it's literally an investment of your time. And when you walk out of there, you feel maybe more complete than when you walked in.
That's exactly right. I need to add value if I'm going to compete. Frankly, everybody's playing in the experience economy. And the more competition there is, the more distrust there is from customers. And so in order to rebuild that trust and create value for the services and the experiences that we provide, we have to effectively add value. And your customer's going to tell you if you're doing that, if they can tell you that their time spent with you was time well spent, saved, or invested.
Now, one of your clients was Oprah, as I understand it, or one of her product lines anyways. How did you use aspirational storytelling techniques around that to really differentiate it in the wellness brand space?
Yeah, so I worked with Oprah and her team when I was at Weight Watchers. And leading up to the final days before the pandemic began, we did a multi-city tour with Oprah at the helm, and she filled arenas with her audience, and it was co-sponsored between her brands as well as Oprah, which she was a majority shareholder at the time. And I was responsible with others for the coaching experience that happened on the decks. So outside of the arena, you could interact with a coach to identify your next steps and make some decisions about where you wanted to go. Now, this was built on the heels of some other work that we had done in the well-being space that was really looking at holistic well-being and how people use reflection as a powerful tool for creating well-being. One of the things we found in our research is that people who reflect regularly rate all of their life systems higher than those who don't. So reflection is a huge part of what we encourage the companies that we work with to do, especially those who are in the meaningful motivation, the aspirational or the transformational space. And so Oprah's whole tour was built around reflection. Yes, there were speakers. Yes, there was music and dancing and lots of play, but really the core of the experience was reflection. And it was asking people to think about in specific detail how their lives were going, what they wanted more and less out of their lives, what might be getting in the way of their lives, and set some action-oriented goals to create change in their lives. So it's very much, I think, related to this idea of personal narrative and understanding what it is that we really value, what really matters to us, and then translating that into action. So at the heart of any transformative experience, and this is a lot of the work that I've been focused on personally, is helping people create change in their lives. And in order to do that, we have to have some directional focus. Of course, we have to know where it is we want to go. And that only happens through reflection. So one of the things I like to teach companies to do is to get their customers to self-identify the change that they want to make and how they would measure success. So in doing so, they start to get some really powerful information that they can then use to measure progress. If you don't show progress, your customer's not going to stick with you. But if you show progress to things they don't care about, it doesn't matter. You have to show progress about what they care about.
So this whole experience with Oprah was around Weight Watchers then? And besides, not just selling the Weight Watcher program, but taking it deeper and helping men and women do a more job of reflecting on who they are, what they want, and the impact that they're going to have in the world. So it goes beyond the product.
Yes. The name is funny in retrospect. It was called the 2020 Vision Tour. 2020, of course, did not unfold the way any of us expected. But yes, it was about helping people create a personal vision. Indeed, exactly. We got a crash course.
In some of your work, too, you talk about the transformation economy. And, of course, there's the attention economy. There's the experience economy. We've added so many descriptors to the term economy. I've not heard of the transformation economy, and yet you said that marketers, strategists in particular, really have to understand what this is to be successful in it. What is it, and how do you become successful in the transformation economy?
Well, that might be a longer conversation, but let's try to start it off. So the transformation economy is the economy of creating change. And we are seeing an increasing number of companies play in the personal transformation economy specifically. And we're seeing an emerging employee transformation economy certainly begin to emerge. But when we talk about individual change, first and foremost. So people, since the dawn of time, have sought change. We have desired to be different, to be more, to have more. And historically, we met those needs by going to our religious leaders or our tribal leaders or our family leaders. And yet, as society has become more fractured and more dispersed, we have become more apt to hire companies to help guide us on personal transformation. And so that is really the driving force behind so much of what we see in the transformation economy. And there's a vast range of transformations that companies aim to meet, whether it's the entire space of healthcare certainly plays in transformation, from sick to well, from flabby to fit, right? And so really it is a from to change. We see it more and more in the financial well-being space. And we are seeing it really in every category that we work with. And so it's any company that aims to create change potentially could play in the transformation economy. The transformation economy is sort of what comes after the experience economy. And if you're familiar with that term, you probably learned it through Joe Pine, the author of The Experience Economy, and one of my close collaborators and with whom I co-lead the Transformation Economy Collaborative as a part of Stone Mantel, where we are teaching companies how to effectively deliver on transformational promises. Because the problem is, just like so many underdelivered promises, companies are promising their customers to create change. But the vast majority of these promises are underdelivered on. And the more we as transformational experience strategists underdeliver, the less trust we will have, the less confidence our customers will have in us, and the harder we will have to work. And so it is in all of our best interest that we get better at actually delivering on the promises we make. So that's what we're really helping companies do.
Give us an example of maybe a surprising brand that's in the transformation business. You're thinking you're buying one thing, but what they're really trying to do is to use that one thing to help transform you into the person you're looking to be.
So one of the companies we are working with is the leader in personal technology. And what we're watching there is, yes, they are trying to sell you an iPhone. Yes, they want you to have a piece of technology that fits your life. But ultimately, our technology has become so embedded in our lives, and the technology of the home has become transformative in terms of how we live, how we interact. And so their work is really to help people understand how they want technology to enhance their value systems and better serve their personal interactions. And so a lot of the questions we ask customers is, well, how might this serve you so well that you have superpowers as a result of this technology? And to understand really who people want to become. So if you think of the greatest transformation, right? It's the everyday human who puts on the suit and is able to fly and have these extraordinary superpowers. Well, our customers want those as well. And unless we understand what superpowers our customers want, we are unable to deliver on that hope and change. But when we do know what it is, we actually are pretty well equipped to do it. And so much of it is really about asking our customers, as I said before, how they measure success, what they really want to have happen, what gets in the way of their success, and then intervening on their behalf to be a source of support and enablement to give them superpowers.
So yeah, you're obviously speaking of Apple, and they've kind of been in the transformation business from day one, right? I mean, from that very first TV commercial, and what was that in 1986? You know, and they threw the sledgehammer through the screen and said, you don't have to be stuck with IBM and you know, the big global conglomerates, which of course they are now. You can transform and be your own person, think different and all that. That's been at the core of their mantra since Jobs really launched the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond identity, though, which is just an idea of ourselves, to actual lived impact. And so much of our work is really helping. And I mean, I think it's true with the banks that we work with too, right? When we talk to young people, especially, they are not thinking about money as something transactional. They are not thinking about money for money's sake. Most of the young people I talk to are talking about money for the sake of empowering them to have the lives that they want. To be able, it is simply an enabler. It is not the outcome they are seeking. And so if we can understand that about our customers, then we position ourselves to be able to ask the right questions to say, well, who do you want to be? What are you really working toward? What is this superhero vision of yourself that you want to transform into? And then let's work together to build a roadmap that will take you there. Because if I were to go into a relationship as between a bank and a banking customer with sort of the old goals of make more money to make more money to make more money, I would be vastly under-delivering on what my customer actually cares about right now.
So most people don't have that theatrical background that you do, working in marketing and so forth, it's a small group, a great group. How has that helped you really understand this experience strategy business? And what maybe are some of the techniques that you have brought with you from the theater world to be able to make that customer brand experience a little bit more special?
Well, I think the jobs to be done framework is certainly a wonderful articulation of this. And I'm sure you know Clayton Christensen and his work and jobs to be done.
Let's go ahead and go through that real quick because I'm not that familiar with it. And maybe my listeners aren't either.
Great. Yeah. So jobs to be done is a simple framework that essentially does what all good theater does, is it says that we all have needs. And when you're a director and you're coaching an actor in a scene, what you're coaching them to do is to get underneath the needs and the desires of the customer or of the actor, the character, so that they can convince the person they're talking to meet their needs. And the same is true for every customer any of us has ever had. They have needs and they are trying to get their needs met through us. And that's why they've hired us. And that's what Clayton Christensen articulated so beautifully and powerfully in his work, was that companies are being hired to get a job done for their customer. And when you understand what that job is that you have been hired for, then you can meet your customers' needs and expectations much more directly than maybe we have historically when we thought about it very differently. And so with the jobs to be done framework and this idea of understanding that humans fundamentally are looking for an outcome. We are outcome driven and we are expectation driven. And that's why so much of my work starts with why. And asking people what it is they want, and understanding that we position ourselves to be able to invest for all of us, limited resources. We all only have so much money we can invest in our customers' experience, to invest those dollars wisely.
Yeah, and Aransas, my listeners here will appreciate this. I mean, because they've just heard me say it over and over again. But when it comes right down to that brand story, it's not about your product or service. Your story is not about what you make, but what you make happen. And you are just underscoring this for me, this whole concept is they want outcomes over offerings every single time. They're simply buying your offering as a vehicle to get them to their outcome. But I see so often people making the mistake in their communication, sales, marketing, storytelling of talking about their wonderful product or service. What are some of the other mistakes?
That's them
common
talking
mistakes
to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And navel gazing, right?
Yeah. And we all fall prey to it because we're proud of our work.
Yep.
And we know what it takes, but ultimately, so what? I want to know what you're going to do for me, what change you're going to create for me. And so what I want you to do as your customer is I want you to ask me what I really care about. I want you to ask me how I measure success. Because again, I think, we talk so much about measure what matters and performing to KPIs, but I see especially in the meaningful motivation space, which is where I do most of my work, I see companies trying to drive customer outcomes because it's their KPI. It's how they prove to their leadership that they are doing a good job. But if that doesn't matter to your customer, you're not going to get rewarded for it, no matter how good it looks on paper. And so showing that you are plus or minus some massive percentage point quarter over quarter doesn't matter if it doesn't feel meaningful to your customer. And so the thing first and foremost I challenge companies to do is to ask customers what they do care about. How do you measure success? And I think a lot of companies get hung up when I suggest that because they're like, well, you can't scale individual desires and individual, but in a sense you can. And, I will always say that the only thing worse than not delivering on your promises to your customers, asking them what they want, and then not doing anything with that data. So, if you're going to ask your customers question, be prepared to use the information they give you. So if you can't do that or you're not ready to do that, then don't start asking the questions. But then so often what people want is just a simple acknowledgement and feeling heard out of that data. So we are not all in a position where what we can deliver is lower blood pressure numbers or lower risk in our finances or a higher investment portfolio. Okay, those things are pretty easy to measure. And if that's what I want as an outcome, then great. I want to see those numbers change. But a smart company is also going to measure felt shifts. And to do that, you have to ask your customer, how do you feel now? Now, how do you feel? And really, you don't have to say, this is 27% higher. But if you take like a Peloton or any of the other companies in the fitness space, they have a tremendous opportunity to not just say, oh, you went this many miles further and sort of this hard data that we can measure, but to say, hey, you report feeling more confident this quarter than you did last quarter. Well, ultimately, why did I want to run further? In many cases, because I wanted to feel more confident. So ask people what they really care about, the why behind the why, and then power your systems to measure that, to inquire about the progress of that, and use that to guide your success.
Where can people find out more about your experience strategy trend report? Because I think that's really fascinating. I have not looked at it yet, so I want to go right after this and jump into it.
Yay, I hope you will. We've been so excited by the response to it. It's made for a very busy Q1 because we've had a lot of conversations about these trends and what they mean for businesses as they're road mapping. In the crazy sea change that we are all facing, we need good data to power our decisions. And so we're really proud to be able to give that. You can find it all at stonemantel.co. You can learn about the Collaboratives program where Joe Pine, Dave Norton, and I help companies be more successful for their customers to really design and build their roadmaps. You can download for free the entire Experience Strategy Trend Report and learn all about us and the work that we do. You can also listen to our podcast, the Experience Strategy Podcast.
The Experience Strategy Podcast. And what is the last little insight you will leave our listeners with today if they want to really start thinking about their own experience strategy? What's one more thing they can do right now?
I think we work with a lot of big companies, but understanding your customer is not the privilege of the few. Every company has the potential to better understand their customers. And there are some very simple frameworks and some very simple research methodologies that you can use that make a huge difference. And that's a lot of what we aim to share on our podcast is ways that the mom and pop shop down the corner can leverage the same tools that the billion-dollar companies do.
The Experience Strategy Podcast. How long have you been producing it?
The podcast has been going on for a couple of years now, and I've worked in experience strategy for almost 20 years. So collectively, between the three of us, we're going on a century of experience in this this field, which is
and Aransas, where can people learn more about you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn and all the places as Aransas Sava, and like I said, at stonemantel.co. You'll see lots more from us.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I can't wait to start digging through that report. One came out last year, and maybe you're not familiar with it, or maybe you are. It was on experience strategy, but it was on communications and the cost of miscommunication in business. For North American businesses, it added up to like $1.2 trillion or one lost day of productivity per person per week. Because of miscommunication. Doesn't that actually come right down to the experience and the experience strategy, the way you you, that's a ubiquitous you, have designed it out there.
Yes.
And if they are having this very poor communication experience, either in person or, much more in this world, the hybrid world, then what is it actually costing you? So I got so much out of that report, and I had the Harris Poll on. Abby Lunny from the Harris Poll came on and talked about it last year, as did Dorian Stone from Grammarly. And now I got a hunch that your report might be very similar in my aha moments throughout, so I can't wait to take a look at it, cull through
hope
it.
so.
Because
we tried
really,
to make it very different, and that instead of just delivering insights, we tried to show people how they could actually act on those insights and use them in their organization. So yes, I hope you find them helpful as well.
And that's the trick, because, storytelling is an experience. Every story you tell, you have to think about strategizing that experience you want your audience to take away, because you are lighting up the theater of their mind, are you not? So, you've got to really be paying attention to your audience. And as the famous legendary screenwriting coach Robert McKee says, you got to know that audience in a godlike way.
Indeed. Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a joy chatting with you. Excited to keep learning about your work as well.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for listening to this edition. If you liked what you heard, certainly share it around and check out that Experience Strategy Trend Report over at stonemantel.co, right? Not .com, but .company,
Yes,
.co,
you got it.
stonemantel.co. And if I can be a service to you, come on over to the Business of Story. And if you have yet to take your ABTs of Agile Communications course to really improve your storytelling and the experiences your audiences have, so that you can move them to action from their point of view. What's going to benefit them? And as Aransas said, how you can help change or guide their values. Not that you're going to manipulate them, but you're going to build off the values that they share with them, providing that you can deliver on those values and help them experience them even greater. Check it out. It's at businessofstory.com/ABT, and you can take any one of the 3 courses, and it will help you and your messages land right the first time, every time. Now, join me next Monday when we will have another amazing story artist right here for you. And until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is a story you tell yourself. So make sure that's a great one. Thanks so much for listening.